All right, Mr. Hooper, welcome. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming. I'd like to start off by saying how much I look forward to getting my hat.
I just barely got mine. That's, when you're talking to Cole
But
here.
it's going to say Mr. Hooper on it too, or?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, because it's nice.
Oh, 100%. Thank you. Yeah, I know. I've got them in. I got this one, which is my everyday one. And then
Yeah.
I've got a black one that just showed up from Cole, too. So
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be my dressy one when I have to wear a dress jacket.
But I need it to fit bald, tight. It's got to be snug around the. Oh, very good.
Not pro fit. Not pro fit. We'll definitely get you one, though.
Perfect,
We have
perfect. Well, let's talk about what that hat means. What's Mr. Hooper?
Mr. Hooper. Mr. Hooper has been developed over several years of being in the cannabis industry. At first, it was a basic form of peer support at another clinic, veteran-based, where it was just once a week thing, bringing guys in to make sure that they're mentally, physically stable. They're there, kind of do a once-a-week check-in. And then now it's evolved with the clinic that I'm with now, where it's a once-a-month Mr. Hooper education, where it is the basis of the clinic's education, as well as a spin-off of cannabis education in its whole.
So essentially, Mr. Hooper is this brand that you're building around yourself, right? That represents cannabis education, more or less.
Exactly.
And now it's very veteran specific, or it's very broad.
It's everybody.
Yeah.
It started out for sure very veteran specific, only because that was the market that I was involved with.
Yeah.
Whereas now with the Herb Clinic, we are veteran centric, where we base ourselves only because I am a veteran myself, right?
Yeah.
And I love to help my brothers and sisters. But I've also learned that in the cannabis industry, all sanctions of patients have zero information, zero education when they're getting their basis of, here you go, here's your cannabis as medicine. Nobody knows what's going on, so it's very broad across the board now.
Yeah, it really is. There is an unbelievable gap that maybe people on the outside can't appreciate until you become a cannabis patient, or you're actually put into the system and you're trying to address a certain ailment.
Exactly.
The lack of standardized information from doctor to doctor, and the knowledge gaps are significant.
Even from one doctor to another doctor, the basis of knowledge is how much that they're willing to put into it. There is no...
It's time.
Yeah.
It's
they
time,
they
yeah.
don't get taught at a university level what an endocannabinoid system is anymore. I don't think they've ever been taught. It depends on how much they're looking into it on their own time.
Yeah.
They don't have accredited courses that are going to teach them that yet.
So okay, so let's go back to so you've been a cannabis educator now for how many years? Did the Mr. Hooper session start?
Sessions with
Or
Mr. Hooper. Yeah, it's been with the clinic for a year and a bit now.
Okay,
We've been doing 12, 13 sessions now.
Oh wow. And then how long have you been educating personally from the earliest days?
Oh, the earliest days, I was educating before I was a patient myself. I was educating back in Winnipeg in 2009, 2010. There's some veterans that have come back to me. One person in the last little bit has actually reminded me that I had educated them at Elk Park just outside of Winnipeg in 2010, and I didn't even remember doing it. I wasn't a patient myself.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 2014 when I was a patient myself. So,
So you were providing peer support over 10 years ago on supporting people in your network on how to engage with cannabis as a potential medical treatment.
For sure. It started with my journey into the peer support, and the cannabis education actually started in the peer support part of things.
Okay.
After my last tour to Afghanistan in 2009, myself and another veteran and a handful of other guys out east created a veteran peer support platform called Military Minds. And that went from a Canada-based helping guys from east to west here to now it's global. They have more than 150,000 followers just on Facebook alone.
Wow.
That has evolved now into also the Rolling Barrage, which was started by the now president, Scott Casey. He is doing east to west Military Minds Rolling Barrage, where it's motorcycles and veterans, and we're running from Newfoundland all the way to BC, stopping every province and creating that awareness as to what post-traumatic stress and combat post-traumatic stress is, and raising money towards those causes to helping our brothers and sisters as well.
So it's all around, that all started around mental health for veterans.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, so
About
the mental health, the mental
2009.
well-being. So, and I know we're kind of working in reverse here, which is I guess kind of the idea. So we know where you're at. So today you're 10 years, you're over a decade into having some sort of medical and mental health involvement, starting with the veterans and you in the military yourself. So you've got this very strong personal relationship with cannabis as a medication and health support tool, and now you've parlayed that and rolled that all into your own ongoing journey in helping other people find their own potential solution within cannabis. So that's where you're at. Let's go back now to maybe the beginning or wherever you would like to go to on the beginning of your relationship with cannabis. I'd like to maybe follow that through. When did you first smoke cannabis, or was it always medical?
So medically, I found it on a course called Cannabis, which is an equine-based couples counseling. It has a psychiatrist and a 20-year military veteran who kind of explains what a mental health is, and they break it down to a post-traumatic or an OSI, occupational stress injury, both to the veteran and to the significant other that they bring on that course, but separately.
Okay.
And then they bring you.
So they're teaching the couples independently
what it is, right? Because there's some guys and girls out there who have been dealing with post-traumatic stress or an occupational stress injury from the military, but not knowing exactly what it is. And then finally they get a diagnosis, and now they're like, oh, okay. And then as a soldier, you're going to dedicate your entire brain to learning what that is and what's going on. But in the meantime, you've completely separated yourself from your significant other. You may have gone through a divorce. You may have gone through all that other kind of stuff, where they bring that significant other or child or mother or whomever you choose to go with you.
Yeah.
And then they break that down as to what that injury is to them from a psychiatrist and another veteran standpoint. And then they bring you together
To bring that understanding into the family,
Bringing it
there's
to
somebody,
a team level. Because you're going to be at this level of understanding, right? Where then once the veteran has a complete understanding, and it's a lifelong cycle of learning with mental health, right? It's
you mean
no
it doesn't
different.
take 5 minutes and can I just watch a YouTube?
Oh yeah,
thing?
yeah,
Okay,
sure, and
okay,
then it's fine.
Watch 5 minutes YouTube.
Yeah, and then you'll know what
video.
a post-traumatic
Okay.
is.
I'm just kidding.
And then they take you and your significant other or your partner, and then they put you on an inside, like not a barn, but an equine-based barn, and they put a horse, which is a flight animal, and they make you do couples different activities, and it brings you closer because you have to be able to control your anxiety and the inside of you, because you can't be going all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas it's going to be doing the same thing for your spouse, because now they're worried about you and they're not worrying about themselves. So then they have to worry about themselves. And then you've got an animal who can sense both of you and will take off if you're not balancing yourself on the inside, as well as your spouse, keeping you both accountable. And then that horse will also teach you quite a bit about, and Ava and I, my spouse, we've done 2 courses on it now, and it's life-changing.
Oh, wow.
Anyways, the first space, it's just the veteran aspect of things. We were sitting around, and I had just gotten out of rehabilitation, about 90 days in-house, and that was to deal with post-traumatic stress and as all of my addiction issues with my opioid pain pills and all my other pills from the military that they had given me to try and help with post-traumatic stress. And I was sitting there, and another veteran friend noticed that I was in a lot of personal distress because I was trying to deal with everything this way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to do. I'm medication free now. I am just going to be Bryce.
With you got rid of all
everything. I was
opioids,
off of everything.
all everything.
I was off of everything. Yeah, I had gone through.
And you were just trying to stonewall through
me.
it, essentially.
Yeah. And I was doing a crap job.
Yeah.
And one of my buddies noticed it, and he's like, "Try this," and he handed me a nighttime joint, and it was just like, it was like night and day.
Yeah.
I slept for like 12 hours that night, and I don't think I had slept for 12 hours ever.
Yeah.
Like since 2004, 2002, when everything kind of started with the military.
Yeah. That's when you went in 2002?
I joined
roughly?
in January 2002, yeah.
And then so you had a military career, and then you were in veteran mode essentially at this point, and so it was roughly 2013 you smoked that joint, that joint.
2014.
2014?
Yeah, it would have been 2000, yeah.
And you got a good night's sleep.
It was amazing.
So
well, that on top of,
well, that's not
only were
12 years, I mean.
Yeah.
That's not one good night's sleep in 12 years.
Yeah,
is that bad?
Too bad. Between, I mean, you got to remember when I joined.
That's super bad, Bryce.
Yeah, when I joined basic training in 2002, 3 months later, I already broke my neck.
Yeah.
And I had a training accident where I was a quadriplegic for 7 days in the Toronto Neurological Center. So I've been dealing with that kind of pain right from 2002.
Oh my gosh.
On top of, I've broken both my ankles. I've injured my left knee. Being a truck driver in the military isn't very good on your back. And so I've damaged my back in its entirety. And then my neck in 2002 destroyed my shoulder on exercise. Every finger, every bone in my hands have been broken. I was also that guy that cut off both my casts to make sure, on my legs, to make sure that I could go on tour, right? When the doctor was like, you have to keep that on for 3 more weeks, but you're leaving in 2 weeks. So in other words, you're not going on tour. I was that guy that flipped out my knife and started to cut. Like, no, you don't understand.
So
I am going on tour.
Yeah, because it meant everything. Meant
was
a lot
a
to you.
career. Yeah,
so why did you? Well, let's go right back then. So why did you get in the military in the first place? How it's 2001, right? You're young, Bryce.
Yeah.
And you're going in the military.
Okay, so this is a kind of a weird circumstance.
Yeah.
Growing up in, well, not growing up. My dad moved to my dad moved us to the Okanagan in grade 10, so 96, 97, 98, and as an RCMP officer. That's why we moved there. I always had a calling to join the military. I always wanted to be a G.I. Joe from the time that I was just a little kid. My mom can vouch for that one right from the start.
Real American.
Yeah. I've
Should
always kind of
we just
chased
sing the
it.
theme song together right now?
I actually don't know the G.I. Joes. I know, right?
Cut that out.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just move on. We'll watch an episode later, though.
And so 2000, it would have been about January 2001. And there's a recruiting center in Kelowna, which is North Okanagan. And so against both my parents' wishes, I went up there and started the paperwork. Skipping forward along a whole bunch of testing, everything from they had to test because I had a childhood asthma horrendously, to the point where I was always on puffers or any of that kind of stuff. September 10th, 2001, I get a phone call from the recruiting center. It's not a significant date for most people, but the following day in the world history might be September 11th, 2001, when the terrorist attacks. My recruiting center called me on the 10th of September and just wanted to make sure that I was still good to go, that I still wanted to join. And I said, yeah, there's no reason why not. Everything's in place. If I qualify for a certain position, I'm ready to go. So I woke up on September 11th, 2001, and it was just a normal day for me. And I was on my way to a grocery store job that I had in Summerland. And about 9 o'clock in the morning, my recruiter called me and asked if I still wanted to join the military. And at that point, I hadn't seen the news because I was just stocking shelves and that kind of stuff. And I said, yep, I'm ready to go. By January of the following year, I was wearing boots and on my way to becoming a soldier.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And so I guess that was a traumatic time worldwide, and you were joining the military at a very a very polarized time, and you were on your way almost knowingly to something. You were on your way to a tour.
At some point we were going to be churned out to go somewhere for sure. Yeah.
So you got in. 3 months in, you have this injury. You got in the military 3 months in training.
I had just graduated basic training.
Yeah.
I did my training in Saint Jean, Quebec. Beautiful area. But coming from the Okanagan, where it was plus 25 in January, and then I flew to Saint Jean, where it was minus 47.
It was minus.
Wow.
Minus FU.
Yeah, I was an Okanagan boy that didn't show up with a winter jacket.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had long hair too,
He's
so
supposed to get you.
They loved me. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. And then
I'm going back and forth to St. John, New Brunswick, and it was also very cold there 3 weeks ago.
Very cold for sure.
It was raining slush as I was driving down.
Gross.
I was like, this isn't snow, this isn't rain, this is slush. Why is it raining slush?
Yeah. It's springtime.
Yeah, it's springtime. But yeah, so you landed there, yeah.
And then then graduated basic training 3 months later, and then we were on our way to Borden, Ontario, and that's where me and my roommate, in a drunken wrestling match, basically, we broke my neck, and I was a quadriplegic for almost 7 days.
Yeah.
And then, by the miracle of whatever, my legs started to twitch on the Tuesday, and I was back on course by the Friday.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
And then now you were in a recovery mode. So up until that point, did you take? Did they give you painkillers at that point, or did they?
I was taking T3s, and I was taking all sorts of painkillers just because of all the injuries from snapping the muscles.
From that instance, and up till that point, did you ever take anything like that, or
nothing?
Nothing like that.
No.
So it was an injury. You entered in, entered into the medical system essentially at that point. Yeah. And now you've got these severe injuries and ongoing. So was there a lasting pain? Like, what was the recovery process like? Are you in pain right now?
Yeah, there wasn't much of a recovery process. Yeah. From the time that I could feel my feet to the time that I was back on course, the military basically just didn't check a box and say that I was going to have like 18 weeks of rehabilitation and then back on course. As if I couldn't get on course by that Friday, they were going to kick me out and release me. And because I had done less than a year, I was just going to be written off. So
Oh shit. Yeah.
when they told my parents that A, I was a quadriplegic, and 2, I was being kicked out of the military because of this was a self-induced injury. It was me and my roommate wrestling.
Yeah.
There was not going to be any coverage, and I was going to be in a wheelchair. So it was up to me to basically get out of this situation and back in. And then once I could move my legs again, which it just kind of came to, I was back on course and just dealing with the chronic pain, and they were willing to give me any kind of painkiller that I needed to carry on.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was just natural progression of the military. I've injured myself at basically once a year almost for them to be able to carry on throughout. And then those injuries just added up over time, I guess. And with the amount of painkillers that I was prescribed, basically.
Yeah.
At one point, it was just like a brown lunch bag full of Percocets and whatever else that they had in there, and that was my weekly dose, and it was just
Yeah. So you were kind of interchanging able to get with like prescribed to take, or you used able to get instead of prescribed to take. So I feel like kind of that's where you ended up, right? How many of these painkillers am I able to get? But when anybody's starting out on their journey into these painkillers, like it's how much they recommend for you to take, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what were those recommendations in an ongoing basis? Like, did they like? Do you remember the dosing advice they gave you? Was it take as needed? Did they scale it? Like what was that scale up? Like I'm interested in understanding that.
At first, it was what they prescribed. Of course, I mean, with any new injury and any new medication, including all of my post-traumatic stress pills, I always listen to what they asked and how they asked you to do it, right? So if it was twice a day with X amount of pills, I would do exactly that.
Yeah.
But after so long of taking those, like the pain pills, where you take two pills twice a day and it just wasn't working, I, like just anybody else, started taking, I take 3 in the morning and then 3 at night. Okay, well,
so
now
you just started upping your own dose, or okay. But would you advise them of this though when you went in? Like
of course.
So you would up your own dose, but how did that work? The day, let's say yesterday was the 2 and 2 and today was the 3 and 3, and your appointment is in a few weeks. So then you go in and you just did 3 and 3 for a few weeks. Then you go in, you just tell your doctor that, and do they increase your prescription, or how did that
Well,
rotate?
at that point, I was also on a pain management program as well too, right? So they had
so they put you on a program.
I had physio, and I had acupuncture and everything else, and chiropractor and all that other stuff. They were trying.
Yeah, you were prescribed a full. Okay, that's awesome. You were prescribed a full integrative. Get better
and because
program.
of my injuries too, right? Everything from both broken ankles to the top of my my head, my neck being busted up, and my back being broken. They had me on different physio programs. But after a while of going to said physio programs and nothing helping, other than chiropractor, which still to this day, and acupuncture and massage therapy and that kind of stuff, where it's the continuous beating the knots and kneading out the pain and stuff.
Keeping it under control. So that's all helpful. That
is
very helpful.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
It was I hate to say it, but it was the opioid pills, where it was just like after a while, nothing was helping. Or this was saying that nothing was helping.
Yeah.
And the pills just became, all of a sudden I would be out. But it wasn't like 2 or 3 days out. I was 2 or 3 weeks out worth of medication.
Yeah.
But any time that I brought it up to a military doctor or the civilian counterpart within the military, my script was always taken care of.
Your script was always reloaded.
Always. It was either reloaded at the time of need, or it was upped so that way there was never a time of need. There was never.
They upped it. So there wasn't this. You weren't hiding this. Like throughout your career, it wasn't you were like hiding.
No.
your prescribed amount went up continuously.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was also very open about my mental health struggles.
Yeah.
At the very start, like 2002, 2003, 2004, my first tour in 2004, where some of the mental health struggles started.
Let's talk about that. So we're kind of we went through the injury, right? And we kind of went on we went down the path of you. I'm everything we just talked about. I'm assuming it's coincides with what we're about to talk about. So now you were put on a pain management regime after this injury when you first got in. You're about a year in, and you're using the health and wellness system, which I'm hearing isn't necessarily a bad system. That's in the military. They've got all this infrastructure around.
Yeah.
It's not like they didn't just give you pills and send you on your merry way. They had these other things there.
Yes,
but simultaneously they didn't not give. They didn't
exactly.
They didn't actively monitor, manage, or anything like that in that. That was the main tool they used, so to speak, right?
Oh, yeah.
From what I'm gathering.
It's definitely a pill pushing society. I can't speak about it now because I've been out for so long, but 100%.
Yeah, at that time, your experience was that, right?
Yeah.
So what is that first tour like? Where did you go? Where did they ship you off to?
I went to Bosnia in 2004.
Okay. What was going on there?
It was a wrap-up tour. It was Roto 14. I went there as a young private to refuel helicopters for the Canadian Air Force, and the Canadian helicopters had already packed up and gone home.
Okay.
So my tour was basically, I refueled a lot of American and Hungarian helicopters out of Velika Kladusa or Camp Black Bear.
Yeah.
But I also became like a camp driver.
Yeah.
So I became a VIP driver is what the term is in the military. And I drove everybody from 408 Squadron, so any of the lead command team there, anybody at the helicopter squadron that is based out of Edmonton, they were deployed there, along with anybody out of there's a Quebec infantry detachment called the Vendus or the 22e Regiment.
Yeah, the Vendus. I've heard of the Vendus.
Yeah, so they were there at the time, and anybody that needed like a quick ride, I was their kind of go-to guy as well.
Yeah.
And I worked on my suntan.
Yeah.
We
So that was a good tour.
We did a lot of drinking. Oh yeah.
So that was not a bad one.
No, not a bad one. No, I mean we did lose two Hungarian soldiers. That it kind of struck me weird because I've always been one of those where I'll make friends with other people. And I had sat and had supper with these two guys at the same table the night before, and they had gotten into a vehicle, and one thing led to another, and the vehicle drove into the side of the mountain, and both died. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so they had to get flown out, right? So it kind of affected me, those two human beings that I was sitting and eating with the night before are now no longer, right? Otherwise, there was no major incidents there, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, so you got to go through that tour. You're still in recovery mode, essentially, or you're recovered by now, or at least you're you found a balance, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
So where did it go from there?
So 2004, I would have been posted to Winnipeg on the Air Force Base, and I was playing baseball for their base team, actually, and I was able to break both my ankles. One in 05 and then one in 06. Yeah. And both of those years, I also cut both of those casts off to go on either the build-up exercise for the tour or the actual tour in 2006.
So you weren't giving your ankles much of a rest.
No, there was never a really break period. I mean, it's always been my way of dealing with life is 0 or 13. You're either on or you're off. Yeah. And there's never been an in-between.
Yeah.
And I'm finding now that you kind of need that in-between, because if not, you're just going to break yourself. Really, really weird. And it's hard for me to dial back from full to nothing, right? Where you define that medium where it's always kind of been full force. So.
No. So what was your tour in 2006?
So 2006 would have been Camp Mirage.
Yeah.
Camp Mirage was an undisclosed location in the UAE. But everybody knows if you go onto Google now and you type in Camp Mirage, let alone CBC, or there was a couple others that ruined it in about 2008 for us and disclosed the full location.
Okay,
So the secret Air Force base in Dubai no longer became the secret Air Force. Anyways.
The well-known secret Air Force base.
Yeah, it's on Google Maps, believe me. But at the time, we couldn't even take pictures of where we worked because we were on a runway inside of their Air Force base, inside of another Air Force base. Right. So it was like, it was hidden. Like even the Americans got kicked out of the area that the Canadians were in. And we were able to bring in all of our other allied friends because of our position there.
Yeah.
So my job there was as a transport rep. I was corporal, master corporal level. So junior leadership. And my position basically became where I was liaison with the host nation. So there was an Egyptian who was employed by the Air Force, and his job was to look after the refueling tank farm. So dealing with millions of dollars worth of aircraft fuel, jet fuel, and all that other kind of fancy stuff. Along with leading about 20 host nation employees. I was in charge of transportation within the base, and then I was also tagged with pallbearer for the anybody that passed away or was killed in action in Afghanistan would have to be flown to Camp Mirage, where they brought in I can't remember what the people are called that inspect the bodies.
Oh, the coroner.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So they flew those guys in from Toronto into Dubai at Camp Mirage, where they did all their fancy stuff. Well, everybody saw during the Afghanistan war the ramp ceremony out of Afghanistan. Right? There's a second ramp ceremony that always took place before Toronto, though, and that was in Camp Mirage.
Okay.
So off camera, it was also a hidden base, right? So we couldn't televise it. But it was the exact same ramp ceremony that happened in Afghanistan happened there, and I was part of that team for 27 of the 33 men that were killed in 2006. So that in itself weighs heavily, because the guys that were in Afghanistan at the time were part of the 1st Brigade, where I trained for the first part of my military career too, in Edmonton. So a lot of the guys, I didn't know them personally, but I knew them. Like if it wasn't like an infantry or a combat engineer or a medic, it was somebody that I had done training with at some point. And being an MSC op or a truck driver, you're always attached to somebody else bringing logistics to all of them, right? And
you're engaging with 100%. With everybody, with a lot of people every day, right? Through your whole and getting to know these guys, right? So I mean that's and you're all in there together, right?
Yeah.
So
and it was a pretty frustrating piece, because I had friends that were also MSC ops that were up north, and they would have to come down into Dubai to get stuff, or they're on leave or whatever, right? And just hearing them and talking to them, and then doing the ramp ceremonies and seeing and not being able to go up that way and help as well too. It was mentally just debilitating. So let's
kind of go to that. So you're through what are quite quite heavy experiences, right? And injuries, and you're also, always, you're always recovering from something, and you're always gaining something new, right? And I mean, that's military life. I mean that
Oh, yeah.
you're and this is only a presumption, and only what it appears to look like from the outside, and this can include other very this does include other very serious and traumatic professions, like many RCMP officers and many people,
yeah.
the men at firefighters, ambulance driver, nurses,
First
doctors,
responders, 100%.
first responders,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean these you and these other people that are just on the front lines all the time, that are supposed to be invincible, right? So you build an army, you build an army of military men and women that are meant to kind of go in and do these, or be
Yeah.
involved in these horrendous traumatic things and be okay, right? They're supposed to be okay out the other end, and then you line up, you line up first responder, ambulance drivers with that, right? And they go in. So it just appears from the outside of all these professions is that you're not done, or you're just trying to figure out how to deal with these traumas that are getting built up, while you're putting new trauma
ones
on
into it.
top of it.
Oh, yeah.
As you move forward,
Oh,
and a lot of it. I mean that's kind of life in general. I mean it's people moving through life trying to deal with whatever personal traumas they have, but there's
Yeah.
ranges.
Oh, yeah.
There's severe ranges,
Oh,
and these first responding traumas, or military traumas, where you're in this organization. I mean I guess you could equate that to looking at somebody and saying, well, you both you and I are in the construction industry actually as well, and it's not that or have been, and it's not that nothing has ever, it's not that things don't happen in the construction industry, because they do. But I mean, imagine if I tried to imagine going to a construction site and there being thousands of people across a few different sites of this company, and sending 37 of them home. That didn't make it out the other end. I mean, that's not a fun thing to be part of. So from there to when you became part of this military minds movement. So at what point in your career during that time? I mean, you said you were very open with your mental health issues, but at what point did you identify them and say, "Oh, I think I have some issues here," and then start the
process thereof?
Yeah, the permanent journey, right?
So that would have been after my 2006 tour.
Okay. It was right after that tour.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a couple incidents throughout that tour itself that will always kind of stick with me. Mm-hmm. And it was that point where I kind of noticed after that tour is when the nightmares started as well. Mm-hmm. And I went in and I tried to, it would have been about 2006. And I just went into the mental health department to try and help with sleep. Because at that point, my pain was, it was what it was. I was in so much pain constantly that I was just taking the regime of pills that they prescribed, and it was helping.
You were treating yourself for physical ailments up till 2006, right?
Totally.
Just,
yeah.
Yeah.
I had
blown
my shoulder. I had blown my shoulder out. I had done all this kind of stuff, right? I was still young, right? So it didn't hurt to the extent of where it shouldn't have slowed me down, because I was still under 25, right?
Yep.
I was still, nothing hurts at 25. You could run into a wall and it doesn't hurt, right? I mean, it just is what it is.
Rebound a lot quicker.
Right?
At 25,
Yeah.
I know.
Whereas to now, at 36, not a chance. Like, I hurt my back putting my socks on in the morning, right?
Hey, socks are dangerous these days. They're tight, they're fancy, they're distracting. I mean, it's a lot of work.
So yeah, 2006 would have been where I reached out, because the nightmares started to get just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. they weren't making sense. Some of the nightmares that were presenting themselves weren't even what actually happened, right? So my mind was all sorts of twisted at that point, and I honestly don't know if it was because of some of the other pain pills that I was on, or some of the other medications that I was given at that point, or told to, because at that point we also have to look at, and it's really big now in the veteran community, is the mefloquine.
Mefloquine. I've
And
never
so
heard of that.
it is a anti-malaria medication that has been given out to the troops everywhere in the world.
Okay.
The States, the UK, Australia, all the other big countries have stopped giving out said medication because it's actually not a medication. It actually creates nothing more than nervous system injuries and brainstem injuries, so brain damage. Like countries like Australia and the United States.
Did they find this?
They're settling now in courts, actually. The UK,
God.
Australia, all these, and Canada is still using it, my friend. That's the worst part. So that is something else that comes into play now because of my deployments into malaria-stricken injury areas.
Yeah.
We were also told that this medication was to help us, but at the same time, Tuesday nights and everybody, whatever night that they were given it, it was notorious for nightmares. It was notorious for, you wake up the next day and you're like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why am I dreaming about this kind of stuff? But it was actually, and we weren't told to stop taking the medication, even though these side effects were presenting themselves.
It was a daily dose. Was
a
it a daily
or
dose
weekly dose? Yeah, depending on where you
So
were.
it was in pill form.
Yeah.
In pill form. So it was a weekly dose pill to keep.
Anti-malaria issues.
Don't they have vaccines? Isn't there malaria vaccines?
Oh, I'm
Or
sure.
am I wrong on that?
I'm sure there is, man.
I have no
That's the
idea.
worst part
I
is
have no-
that
yeah.
the Canadian military, and it's been shown now, is that it was a giant pharmaceutical, unregistered experiment on the Canadian forces, and it dates back all the way to pre-Somalia, so 1991.
Yeah.
And then they've been doing this on the Canadian troops. It's all over everything right now. It's kind of disgusting, but so that may be a portion of where some of my instance where my brain wasn't making sense to me. My brain was telling me things were happening or things had happened overseas, and they hadn't happened. Or they,
So was this dream? Because dreams are dreams. Like when you go to bed and you wake up and you know, if you can say, okay, that was a dream, not a memory, right?
Yeah.
But are you saying, you know, you were feeling like your dreams were skewing your memory? Is that what you're? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So at one point,
you were starting to. They were melding. You're like, is that a memory? Is that a memory now?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Or I'd even have like flashbacks throughout the daytime, coinciding with military experiences that weren't actually going on, or that didn't actually happen. But it was my brain basically telling me, okay, this is what's happened now, or this is what's going on now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that led right into my last tour in 2008.
Yeah.
And that led
So that had
with-
started, and then you went on tour again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Plus all of my other painkillers, and at that point I was already
So
taking.
now you're not sleeping.
I was
before 2000. But were you sleeping before, or you just weren't sleeping because you were like young and partying before 2006?
I was
and
also
then-
a big drinker.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So
Huge.
before 2006, it was just you weren't getting a.
I was in a
good
lot
amount
of pain
sleep
because of
but
the
you're a
amount-
young man too. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I was drinking
Well,
Monday
I wasn't
to Monday.
getting much sleep during those
Yeah,
times
exactly,
either. I'll be
right?
honest with you.
Yeah.
I should have been getting more sleep for sure. But in 2000, after 2006, now you've got these dreams and it's also affecting your sleep again. So
Oh yeah.
and that's not helpful,
None
right?
whatsoever.
When you're not getting sleep, it's that circle. It's that circle of.
Constant tiredness.
Yeah, you're tired, and then it's hard on your head, and then your head's hard on you, and then
Pain is even worse.
Yeah,
and
and then your pain's even worse because you didn't sleep, and then all of those things make you sleep worse again the next
Oh,
night.
yeah. And then you've got
And then
depression
on
and
and on.
anxiety and all that other stuff thrown into it.
And you can't sleep it away. You can't get your body can't recover. You're not getting any recovery time at all in this like state.
And I'm also working in the military at this time
Yeah.
too, so I'm up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I'm at work at 6:30, and I go till 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Yeah, you have a very fixed window that you have to try to make yourself sleep in as well, of course, right?
Yeah.
But so 2008, you go on your last tour. Where was that?
Afghanistan.
Oh, that was in Afghanistan.
Yeah. So I went in as a replacement. I wasn't even supposed to go. My ex-wife, my wife at the time, she was supposed to deploy to her first mission. I was actually getting a portion of my left sleeve done, tattoo work, on a Sunday. She was in Wainwright training, and I got a phone call from my boss that said that the guy that was overseas had broken his hip, and I am the only other guy in Western Canada that held the qualifications supposedly. And so by Tuesday, I was in Afghanistan.
Oh wow.
No training, no build up. Most Kandahar, most Afghanistan tours, you usually get 12 to 18 months of build up training.
Yeah.
I shot a qualifying range shoot,
Yeah.
and I was in Afghanistan within 72 hours,
Yeah.
just doing what my trade asked me to do, basically. So
Yeah. So you won you got rewarded with your marksmanship.
and my trade specific training is all it was. Yeah,
And
100%.
then you got to go to good job.
Oh, yeah.
Off to Afghanistan.
Off to Afghanistan.
Good shot. Good.
Yeah.
You got the credentials.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you went there. What was that like?
Beautiful country.
Yeah.
Hot.
Yeah. Got a good tan.
A beautiful tan. Yeah. I was also healing a portion of my tattoo at that point too, right?
Yeah.
So that was fantastic. Going into a working environment where a lot of these people had worked together for the last 2 years to become a cohesive team, and I had to learn all of their skills within 3 days of being on ground.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I was a perfectionist, OCD, ADD driven kid, where at that point I was already taking painkillers and all that other kind of stuff too. Very mission specific and very orientated, where I kind of grabbed what needed to be done and I just executed
You
it.
got in there
and I just did
had
it.
to prove yourself.
Oh,
You're dropping into this
this cohesive team.
well-oiled machine, and you're the replacement guy, right? So it's like, okay, I better
be something.
I better make a good impression with this crew on the way in. I mean, that's stressful. It's like going in any work setting, right? And I mean, I guess that's the military all the time, right? They're building, they're constantly sending all these random people from all over Canada to all these random places to integrate with each other and other armies.
Yeah.
Right? Not
and
just
being
each
the
other,
best of the best.
like in NATO, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So then you got, cultural, I mean, it's a real, you have to be very dynamic, right? So you have to be socially dynamic in like this rigid institution.
Yeah.
Right?
And fall into the same structure pattern for sure. Oh yeah. And I mean, at the same time, I had always worked with the Army of the West. And when I deployed to Afghanistan, it was Army of the East. It was Petawawa. It was the guys from Ontario. So yes, a lot of the same people I had worked with my trade specific across the board, but now it's also a different mentality. Where a lot of the Army of the West, a lot of the people say that they can be portrayed as like the cowboys, where it may look like it's a little rough and stuff, but shit gets done, right?
Yeah.
Where there's a little bit more. It's Ottawa driven, right? It's Ontario based.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little bit more structurally sound, but things will get done that way. So it was kind of bringing those two mindsets into one as well. Siri's talking to me behind my back now. So it was one of those where I really had to learn bringing the two kind of, but at the same time learning the whole mindset of what Afghanistan was. And putting all of that into like one fresh idea was the third day on ground. I had already done all my paperwork and I'd filled out my will and all that other kind of stuff. And I was thrown into a vehicle to kind of do some job shadowing, and I was a right seater. So in the transport world, a right seater is just like an extra hand, basically, right?
Yeah.
And that was the day that I got to watch how a 7.62 recoilless rifle will actually shatter the driver's windshield. Narrowly missing the driver,
Yeah.
but it's to the point where it's like, welcome to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now the bulletproof glass that was supposed to be in front of you actually doesn't stop the sniper rounds.
Yeah.
And you're a supply driver. Like, welcome to the big leagues,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, it got pretty serious pretty fast. So.
It was the most, would it be fair to say that was the most active war zone you
I had been to.
you had been
Period,
to,
yeah.
or period, yeah.
Before that, it was air bases.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
100%.
that's fairly sheltered. I mean,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
you're on an air base, so unless
Yeah.
you're getting attacked, you're fine.
Yeah.
So what was so take me through that, and then when did that end, and how did that parlay? And during this time, during that tour, were you engaged with someone in the military to help with some of these mental things that were going on?
No, so we were
Not during that
I was pre-screened
Yeah.
before that tour with mental health to see whether or not I was
Oh yeah, you got to get screened before
qualified
every
or
tour. Okay,
I was
yeah.
still mentally sound enough,
Yeah.
even though I was broken to an extent or bent out of shape.
Yeah.
They still double check all of that, right? They also check with your spouse, they check with your girlfriend or anybody else to make sure that you're not just bullshitting your way through things, because soldiers are really good at, I don't hurt at all, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right? It's no big, just send me on the
Yeah.
plane, I want to go. That's an extra whole bunch of money that'll help me in the future, right? So all the boxes were checked. I was taking all the pills that they told me to. But
Now a lot of sorry, I just want to stop there for a second. So so a lot of people may not realize this, but you just said that's a whole bunch more money that'll help me in the future.
Oh, yeah.
So explain to me how the military payroll or employee payroll system works. And I think there's a key difference between like when you're here and when you're on tour.
Yeah. So to the best of my knowledge, I was a
Yeah.
truck driver in the
Yeah.
military. So the way that there is there'll be danger pay and there'll be incentives overseas that you'll get paid depending on your trade, your area of deployment,
Yeah.
as well as what's going on there, right? So say someone, for example, Bosnia in the early days would have been considered a war zone, and they would have had different danger pay, and they would have had that kind of stuff, where
Yeah.
it was no different than Afghanistan in the early days,
Yeah.
when it was really like, and I don't mean to unclassify Afghanistan as early and 2002 to
But-
2006 it was different.
But the military classifies theaters, I believe would
Yep.
be the correct term. So
That's
war theaters, as they have different ratings of danger,
Yes.
right?
Also
at any
with-
time.
Also within trade specific within that area, right?
Yeah,
So if you're
so-
a trigger puller,
Yeah.
you're going to get a different pay rate than a supply tech or an
Yeah,
MSC
yeah.
op or anybody else.
as it should be. I mean,
Yeah.
as it should be.
Oh,
I know this is not how the government paid army works, but I mean, I couldn't put a price high enough on, what somebody should get paid to, go sit in front of bullets, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right?
totally, man.
So
yeah.
I mean that can't be high enough as far as I'm concerned. But I know it's not that. I know it is different levels of pay, but I mean this is a career. People go in the army for a career, and and soldiers are incentivized at different levels of danger, and
Yeah.
the more danger that the person is based on their trade, as you said, or based on their position from trigger puller to the safest person,
Yeah.
that all gets paid and rated appropriately. So there is
Right.
incentive to go into the most dangerous places as well. So
At the same
there
time,
could
though,
be.
if you're going to join for the money, it's
Nobody
not rock
joins
star
for
pay.
the money.
It's not rock star pay, man. Yeah.
No,
In
nobody
way.
joins for the money.
Yeah.
But I, and I'm not meaning to say that. I'm just saying that, you know, people in the military. So you're in this like frontline situation. May be driven to put themselves into more traumatic situations to support their families, right? To help, you know. So even though I agree with you,
and there's also
most people wouldn't be in the Army for the money. It's because of just pride and service, and they want to make something of themselves. And there's a whole bunch of different reasons. But once they're in there, there's a family income responsibility in the Army.
You're still a man providing for your family,
That's
or a
right.
woman providing for your family.
So
100%.
once you're into your job, you're going to make decisions that could give you more financial gain and be putting yourself in these more traumatic situations than maybe you would if there wasn't a financial incentive there, right?
Yeah.
And then so so there would be, I imagine, for a lot of men and women in our armed forces, there's that. It's like, okay, I'm a mom or I'm a dad, and I've got to do this, and this for my family.
Oh yeah.
And then you're weighing this, you know, there could be this financial moment where you're like, okay, well, I'll do this, I'll be in more danger, but you're risking your life, right? Or you know,
yeah, for sure,
it's
yeah.
tough,
and I
I couldn't imagine even to me, even that, like, you know, because I'm not in it, but just talking that out loud, right? I don't know what that's like. I have no idea what making that decision would be. I like, for me, that is like driving to Calgary once a week, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to get in this car and it's wintertime, right? Yeah. And I'm going down there for business. That's like the closest thing I have, and a transport's driving by me and it's really, there's black ice and I'm scared, right? So I do have, you know, that's not comparable, right? You know, but it's happening. Yeah. But just having to like think about that and make that decision alone in you know, and that's your career. You're like, okay, I've got these levels of life endangerment, and then as you leave 25 and approach 30 and 35 and 40, those are very different weights, right? You know, I'm single, I'm 21, 22, 23, now I have a wife, oh wait a minute, now I've got a kid, and now your decisions are getting you know, headier and way and way more, and would have, you know, its own amount of insane burden, mental stressors, you know, anxieties, you know, without any of the other, you know,
just the basic
things.
day-to-day life
just day-to-day life, right?
Yeah.
You know, just that alone, right?
Oh,
no, that's really you know, it's just, you know, a lot to think about, right? So, but yeah, sorry, where do we leave off before I went into that tangent?
I'm not sure, actually.
I think we were on our way.
Into Afghanistan in 2008.
Well, wait, there was this pretty. I think this was in Afghanistan. You and a buddy were doing an inspection, I think, on some sort of remote place where there was a bathroom, and I think there was an animal involved. I got.
That's actually 2006.
Oh, was that 2006? Oh, that was in Bosnia. Okay, let's take a brief stop back to.
So that was.
And then we're gonna go back.
That would be Camp Mirage.
Okay, that was in Camp Mirage.
Yeah. Oh man, Steve Bouchard is gonna kill me for saying this, but yes. So we were. So this was going back into the air base where we were looking after the refueling of all the different planes and the transportation of with the 25 or so local nationals. A buddy of mine, great guy, him and I were tasked to go and look after a portion of the fuel farm that day, where we were to go and check the fluids and make sure that the tanks are still up, livable kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's a little concrete office off to the side, and it was really hot that day. Like, you're talking like it was 60 degrees before 7 a.m. kind of thing, right? So we get into one of this little office, and Well, first it started with me finding a portion of a snake in the shower area.
A portion of a steak.
So it had curled up, and for whatever reason, it had just died.
Yeah.
And so I had got to catch it when I went going off to the bathroom. So I let a little yelp out, and my buddy Steve comes into the room, and he's looking around like, okay, well, it's just, we're fine with this. There's nothing wrong. As we're walking back into the other portion of the building, where there's a desk and there's a couple chairs and stuff, he lets out this, like, what is that? And you're talking about a camel spider that,
Woof.
it's the size of your hand with an exoskeleton, right? Yeah. So you got two guys that are over 6 feet tall. At this point, we both have our C7s, our rifles over top of us. Yeah. We're not allowed to shoot this thing. We would love to at this point. We're looking at each other.
You
this
can't
thing
just discharge your firearm for random reasons.
No, especially being a truck driver in an Air Force environment.
That's a lot of paperwork.
That's right? A lot of paperwork. So this thing now sees us and turns really quick. Well, you've got two 6 foot tall grown men in uniform with rifles, and we're grabbing at each other and jumping at the same time, to the point where we jumped onto like the desk area and we're arm in arm, and we're like, all because of this camel spider.
Yeah.
And we deal with it.
I would be reacting the same way. Full
and
disclosure.
They're gigantic.
I'm terrified talking about it right now.
Yeah, 100%. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh man. There was a whole bunch of other kind of bugs that we had seen too. But
that's awesome. So now we'll fast forward back to now we'll go back to
Afghanistan. Yeah.
And we're back. And so that was so throughout Afghanistan, and you're let's progress to basically from there to your involvement, actively in supporting or in the peer group, and then into the beginning of your current relationship with cannabis.
So 2008, 2009 would have been my Afghanistan tour. We would have been bumped to the right, and I had to stay there a little bit longer due to the replacement troops that were coming in. Around that time, too, I knew that I was struggling severely with what was going on in my head, as well as the chronic pain, as well as what I had experienced on that tour. All in the while, though, I knew that the pain pills that I was taking, they were working, but they weren't. Like, I knew something wasn't right. Yeah. But I put my faith in the doctors and the medical staff and the military staff as they tried to help me. But there was always that in me that I always challenged the status quo. Being a son of an RCMP officer, I knew that side of the house, right? But at the same time, I knew that there was a lot of that structure that... My dad was a cop, so I pushed the buttons, right? I was the oldest, right? I was the kid that always made sure that my younger brothers learned from my mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. So I knew that there was...
You paved the way.
Yeah. So when I, like the pain pills and all that other kind of stuff, I knew it was working, but at the same time, it wasn't working. And so that in itself started to evolve into me looking elsewhere, because at that point, there was... major addictions, there was major problems within my personal relationship and my marriage, my kids, my drinking habit after Afghanistan became... I look at it now, and it was embarrassing how bad it was.
The amount of drinking you were doing.
Oh, God. Yeah. I even found...
And was it progressive? Like, it just got worse and worse and worse as it went on, or was it consistent, or how did that...
No, you know what? Even looking back into Afghanistan now, I found booze and drugs in Afghanistan.
So it was almost like the dam broke. Did the dam break?
My pain
You
at
know,
that
so it was
I had done everything from
Yeah.
all my neck injury. I have 2 back injuries, my knee, my shoulder, my elbow, my hips, both my feet are messed up. Both my ankles are beyond, because I decided to remove my casts beforehand, like all this kind of stuff. And at that point, I've got almost 10 years in the military and I'm broken. Like I've got 3 tours in less than 4 years, where you're supposed to be doing 1 tour and you're supposed to take 12 months off. Like that's what it says in paper.
Yeah.
But all of my chain of command always made sure that that 12 months was signed off, so that way my next tour didn't, right? So I was a workhorse. I was so driven to be, I was running headfirst into the wall and not realizing what I was doing either too, right? So my addictions and my pill use at that point became recreational in ways too, where nothing was really fixing the problem, but I was also trying to chase where my brain would shut off, right? So I was dabbling into recreational drugs at that point too. My drinking was like a 2-6 of a spiced rum or a rye or a
in an evening. Yeah,
every day.
And that doesn't lead to good decisions. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I've never heard anybody say, "Well, I drank a 2-6 and then I solved my problems."
Yeah. At the same time, throughout the day,
then I made all these great decisions right after I drank.
Oh yeah, I made all the best friends, and my wife
when I drink
still
a 2-6
loves
of
me.
whiskey, I do math problems. When I do, no, sorry.
Yeah, man. And I was also drinking during the day too.
Yeah.
So my work environment, and I don't know how it is now.
You progressed to drinks during the day as well, yeah.
The military environment, if you weren't drinking at work, especially in the position where I was in that middle to senior management levels, if you weren't drinking at your desk, people were questioning you. There was a lot of rank where
there's a very strong alcohol culture in the military.
In the military, period.
Period.
Oh yeah. Lunchtime, if you didn't have a liquid lunch, going back to even like 2002, 2003, getting vehicle qualifications, if I had gone to the junior ranks mess where you'll have drinks and eat at lunchtime and not have a jug of beer and then go back on a driving course, and my instructors were there with me and nobody batted an eye. It's no different than when we used to go and play curling for physical training or gym time, and you'd have a jug of beer on the table with you.
Alcohol is just always there. Alcohol is at all the events. Period. It's always there. I mean,
it was an accepted portion of the military environment.
You know, I'll draw a parallel to that, right? Again, different setting, but quite often, business owners and entrepreneurs are in that, using that same kind of justification, right? Or and it ranges from industry to industry, but a lot of meetings in bars, a lot of lunches, a lot of dinners, and easily in many different settings, alcohol much too quickly. Well, and even historically, I mean, it's really become nothing. It just kind of is at this point.
There.
It's just there, and we just allowed it to creep its way into everything. Over the last,
100
I guess
years.
history, 100 years. I don't know, 100 years.
Oh,
since cannabis prohibition. No, that's a different story. But
weird how it all happened around the same time, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's perfectly. Okay in many different business settings and many different
to have a drink there for sure,
lines of work, and it's not okay. Right? Yeah, it's not okay. It's really not.
Mood altering, changing of inhibitions,
slows
everything.
You down, makes you. I mean,
scientifically proven to kill brain cells.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. I what were we just talking about?
Yeah.
Oh no, just kidding. I mean, it's really, it's, and it is the progenitor of, like, from my perspective anyways, and it sounds like you agree, of it's the number one way to make bad decisions.
100%.
Incorporate alcohol into your life
100%,
in an ongoing basis, whether it's like momentary or just ongoing, it just completely drags you down.
Oh yeah.
So really was helping nothing. So you've got alcohol, you've got prescription pills, you've got, and then again, you're in this rotational circle. So the dam broke in 2008, and it went from purely medical to just ongoing. Right,
Yeah.
Just
I was
ongoing.
just
You can call it
dabbling in everything.
you can call it recreational, but there was still the medical. There was still pain in there. There was still
I was still prescribed everything.
Yeah,
I was
you were still
taking.
prescribed
Oh,
everything. So you weren't out of the medical system. You
Yeah.
didn't leave. You were adding things on top, like alcohol and all this other stuff.
And at that point too, they were also adding on mental health type pills.
Oh, so now you're getting
Because I was
antipsychotics. You're
top of-
throwing that.
oh,
Well,
yeah.
this sounds like a real chemical shitstorm, Bryce.
I
Not
have
gonna lie.
I have a journal. I have a journal that I show people that between my ex-wife and myself, we recorded all the pills and time frame of when I was taking it to the environment of what I was taking, and it scares a lot of doctors. It scares most professionals when they look at it, because they're like, why were you taking 1,500 milligrams of trazodone at nighttime to sleep, but then you're having to take 3 times the amount of your morning time stuff to get going? Well, I was putting a horse to sleep at nighttime and then trying to wake it up 2 hours later, right? Like,
You're a drunk walking pharmacy.
100%.
I'm just trying to encapsulate
Oh,
it here. And it's not. And I'm not trying to make a joke of it. It's not uncommon, right? I mean, it's not uncommon at all. It's
very common.
It's terrifyingly common. I mean, you are one of many veterans, thousands that have had similar experiences, been in these similar places, and then outside of the Army as well. I mean, life makes it very easy for people to end up in these situations. A combination of the medical, the reactionary medical system, and it all comes down to a network as well, right? Of support, but it took you 10 years, right? It took a long time.
Yeah.
To get into that, it took it wasn't like you
immediate.
It wasn't in 2002. You didn't just wake up one day and all of a sudden you were out of control.
I'm going to be an addict. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I'm planning on this. Yeah.
It took a long time. And it was progressive, right? It was very progressive.
Yeah.
And then you ended up in this chemical shitstorm is the honestly the best term that I can think of. And that wasn't easy to think through.
No, there was no thinking. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Is between the prescribed medications, the alcohol, the liquors, and the booze, on top of the recreational. I hate that word, because recreational cannabis is linked to recreational now. But I was street drugs. Yeah. Right. It was that on top of the people I was hanging out with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, it snowballs, right? What comes first? What comes first? The people or the
or the drug habit?
It's always a little bit of both, right? It's always at the same time. So then, at one point, you made a decision to start fighting against this thing that took you 10 years to build up.
Oh,
right?
God, no.
10 years.
2008, 2009?
Yeah.
No, at that point, I had almost embraced it. Like, I had realized there was a problem. 08, I was still overseas, so it would have been like from March to November of 2009. There wasn't much thinking. There wasn't much of anything. I was also promoted at work to my last rank at that time. And I was drinking full time, to the point where they used to catch me with a bottle of rum at my desk first thing in the morning, not a coffee.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. Now,
But,
was that Captain Morgan or?
Yeah, it was spiced.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Captain Morgan spiced
Come
rum.
on,
yeah,
man.
I know.
Yeah, I'm a white rum.
It tasted
It's like
good.
drinking sugar for breakfast.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah. I was also 276 pounds at that time too, man. So all the pills, the water gain,
Was
and
that
the weight
bloating?
gain.
That was bloating.
Yeah,
that
on
wasn't,
top of the liquor.
That wasn't
man.
good weight.
Here, and around my eye, I was giant. I had an extra large shirt on. Like, yeah, I was incredibly bloated. I was angry. There was no
Cranky.
thinking. There was, I had young kids at that point too, right? So there was no dad. There was no, if I wasn't at work, I was drinking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I was at work, it was 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was drinking there, and then I'd get home, and by the time I was home, I was grabbing a bottle for my nighttime operations. Like it was, and then dealing with all of the nighttime operations while drunk, drinking, and et cetera, et cetera. It was never, But that was also the time frame that I had stumbled upon. I can't remember the name of the book, but it was the basis of medical marijuana at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was just something that I actually kept it in my garage away from my ex-wife, my wife at the time, because that was one thing that she was against.
Cannabis.
But weed at the time,
Yeah.
it was illegal in the military.
Yeah.
You could, like, that was a career ender. Cocaine, they would send you to a rehab place sooner than cannabis.
Yeah. You got a second chance on coke? Yeah.
Several times, man. Yeah, bro, I don't know how many times. Like, you have to be blood tested and all that kind of stuff to go overseas.
So you know, one thing, like on that topic that I've been thinking about a lot lately is, you know, you've got your opioids and you got your cannabinoids, right? And and now we're in the era where everybody's talking about cannabinoids and cannabis-based and extracted and formulated natural health products, and the research is rolling, and it's unbelievable, and the lack of, you know, the ability to treat things with cannabis, which we're almost getting to that point in our conversation as well, but is unbelievable. But you've got, you know, opium, cannabis, so they're both plants, right? You've got this opium plant that's been all right
properly,
that this whole pharmaceutical industry has been built off of, you know, and all these opiates, you know, your morphines and your oxycontins and all the, you know, most of what you were on for all your pain stuff.
Yeah, man.
That was okay.
Percocets
That was
and
all
that.
right during Prohibition, you know, and opium is you know, also heroin, right? A horrible street drug, street drug that actually affected people in an insanely negative way. And you know, opium has been held in higher esteem by the governments around the world and the general public and everybody than cannabinoids, than cannabis, than, you know, both plants, and it just really goes to show the craziness of it. You know, how much something can be group thought into stigmatization or herd mentality into this non-factual, nonsensical situation where, you know, you can point to heroin and be like, look, there's a heroin addict, right? You can't. You have a hard time.
There's no such thing as an addict.
Yeah, unless, you know, unless the stoner's running, he's got a rainbow shirt on or whatever, and, you know, the classic stoner. But outside of that,
totally right.
You can't, it's really hard to be like, oh, look, there's a stoner, right? You
know,
going to work with his briefcase.
He's being functional.
You know,
what is he doing?
And now we've got kind of the birth of the cannabinoid-based drugs, where we've had these opium-based drugs for so long. Which is crazy.
We're in that transition period right now, personally, where I think we're going to look back on 100 years from now, and that portion where we're coming out of the dark ages of medicine with opium, this last 100 years will actually be looked at as the dark ages of medicine, until we realize how much more positive it's going to be with your plant-based medicines moving forward.
Everything's plant-based. I mean, this is the thing. These opioids have been removed from their plant. You know, opioids, cannabinoids. I mean, that's the craziness of it, right? I mean, you know,
should have been used as a proper medicine instead of this biomechanical.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Synthetic versions of a plant,
what it is, yeah.
of opium plants, right? That's been fine. So let's get to so you started using medical. So you're from 2009. How long were you stuck in this kind of state of self-harm, and then what was the moment? What was the moment you found some can't?
Oh man, there would have been from 2009 until 2013. It was a perpetual cycle of hate, and
you're just in a permanent funk.
wanted to die.
Yeah,
there was no ifs, ands, or buts, and I was trying to find a way to do it.
Yeah.
If it wasn't drinking myself stupid, it was the uncontrollable urges of the post-traumatic depression, the mood swings, the just not understanding my own body and what was going on kind of thing, with all the amount of pain that I was in and the mental struggles. But at the same time, through that entire struggle there from 2009 to 2013, I had also started to give back on my peers, where I was struggling to the point where I noticed there was a need for something.
So you started addressing it in that time. You knew you were reaching out during this period of 09 and 13 to
I mean, I was going and I was doing my own mental health, and I was talking to professionals, and I was going and seeing psychiatrists and psychologists and trying to figure out what the hell was going on, but nothing was making sense though.
Yeah.
Information wise, from what actually happened in the military to what I was perpetuating to other people was completely off. Nothing was making sense. There was a whole bunch of different scenarios where even to this day I can understand why 90% of the people that I used to work with don't want to associate with the old Bryce because of what was going on.
Yeah.
There was just so much negativity. But at the same time, I was trying to educate myself on how cannabis may be accessible as a medicine. I was also giving back to a point where I noticed that legions weren't very warming to younger veterans. The OSI clinics, which is a federally mandated program across for veterans, it wasn't working. Psychiatry, psychology, these social workers.
And this drive of yours all came from this book that you read in 2009, right?
Yeah.
It started there, and it was, but you read it at the beginning of you falling off the cliff.
Yeah.
So you read it while you were falling off the cliff, and you're on these, intense,
definite concoctions of medications and recreational.
So it was there. Like you knew the problem. You knew the problem.
I did.
Like you did. Like you read that book. It's stuck there. You knew all these drugs were messing you up.
Yeah.
But you were trying to address it.
Yeah.
But it was taking, so it's like it was creeping in, and then you said, okay, well now I'm gonna turn my attention to cannabis. So you wanted it to be your alternative, and you were trying to figure out how to get to it.
It was to the point where I was also trying to use my prescribed injuries to get access to specific kind of doctors that I knew were prescribing cannabis at the time.
Okay, so you're trying to find a doctor to get it to you.
Yeah, but because cannabis was so much in its infancy at that time, and nobody wanted to touch a veteran with addiction issues. Yeah. Or drinking issues, or any of that, or all these other pills that I was on, that they thought that I was just going to chase the high that cannabis brought to me.
They're like, oh, we can't put this horrible cannabis drug on top of all these good,
because heaven
prescribed drugs,
right? Because it's not like you're breaking.
He's doing pretty good on all these ones.
Oh yeah, right.
Look at him.
I had bags under my eyes. My chain of command used to catch me crushing up my Percocets on my desk, like either into my coffee or other ways. Yeah. And at the same time, I was trying to find access to this plant that I read about.
This plant.
It's dangerous.
This plant will push him over the edge.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so I think it was where I was restricted from accessing it, because nobody in the area knew, other than for cancer patients or for that like end of life treatment, right, where they would grant access to us. I even went to a neurologist because of my broken neck and my back and all the other injuries. I waited to get in to see him, and he laughed at me for about 30 minutes. This same neurologist now is prescribing in Winnipeg, though, and has been for about 10 years.
Yeah.
Because I think he learned from that process.
Yeah.
And it's not just end of life.
He's a convert. Once you get past the stigma and you start looking at the data, it's irrefutable, right? I mean, the benefit, the potential versus the risk is
100%.
unbelievably potentially beneficial to many different patients in many different situations, right?
And it's almost instantaneous too.
Yeah. And in place of this or that or the other thing.
Totally.
Obviously, if you're working and you are seeking out a medical professional to work with, so what happened? How did you get around it? When were you finally able to start engaging, and how did you do it? Like, how did you first get involved?
I left Winnipeg and moved back to the Edmonton area in 2011.
Yeah.
With everything that was going on, everything broke down. Marriage broke down. My family broke down. Nobody wanted to talk to me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had partaken on that Cannabis course in 2013 in the beginning phases.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that is where I had learnt about the medical cannabis side of things was spreading from east to west.
So they in that course, it was all about using medical cannabis to deal with your...
No, not at all. No.
Oh, no.
No, Cannpraxis was
it was
that course base.
It was the equine course. Okay.
We're all veterans, though. And that first stage of that course was just the combat veterans. And that one night, I had a buddy hand me a joint at the campfire, and it was just
and that was the night you slept. Sorry, yeah.
And it had gone from I couldn't even
course.
find it on the black market, right?
Yeah.
Like I used to dabble and smoke on Sundays, or a friend of mine in the military used to share with, so that we could sleep when we were having bad, hard troubles. But it wasn't until that one buddy said, "Hey, look, like the medical side of things is starting to spread from the East Coast right now, and there's a medical clinic that is veteran orientated that will get you access," kind of thing. But it wasn't in the Alberta area at all, and I didn't get prescribed by them either at first.
You just heard about them.
I heard about it.
You just heard about this veteran specific cannabis clinic on the east, and what was the name of that? I think I knew.
So
marijuana for trauma.
It used to be marijuana for trauma.
Yeah, that was marijuana for trauma. That's
right.
That was the original name. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. And they're now, they're called Canada House Clinics now.
Canada House Clinics,
But I actually had to drive down to Calgary from Edmonton to find a prescribing doctor that was willing to work with a veteran with addiction issues and mental health issues. And he prescribed me 0.5 of a gram
in 2011?
In 2013.
13. Yeah. So 2 years after you got back to Edmonton, you finally found a doctor.
And
2013. So when you started using cannabis in 2013, what was your prescription drug use? And take me through I want to know I want to understand where you're at today. So take me from there.
Okay.
Drugs you were on, pain pills, whatever, and take me to where you are today, and how you use cannabis to get there.
So I also went to rehab in 2013. Yeah. And all of the, except for the like the antidepressants and those kind of jazz, all the pain pills were brought down to a manageable level, so that way once I exited my rehab, I was able to, I had enough where a family doctor could wean off the rest. At the starting phase, though, I didn't have access to enough to really help anything. Yeah. It's a 0.5 of a gram.
You just had a bit of cannabis.
Yeah, and the doctor told me to smoke it.
What were you using it for?
Pain.
Pain. Okay, so you were using it for pain. You had a little bit of it. You were using it for pain.
Yeah, and basically I would medicate at night and just get that sleep.
Did you use it instead of something, or just used it for pain and sleep?
Used with everything that was.
Yeah, but it helped you. So and what was the value add? So the value add is it helped you sleep better. Period.
Helped me sleep. at the same time, sleep equated to a better next day.
Yeah.
And my sleep was under control because my pain was under control. And then if I could wake up with my pain being to a point where I could control it and then get after it with my other pills, my day would be somewhat manageable.
So would it be correct in me saying that the first medical use of cannabis for yourself was to utilize it as a tool to help you sleep?
100%.
Okay, that was your first goal.
Yeah.
That if there
Or
was
it would
a goal,
shut the
that was your
squirrel
goal.
off kind of thing at nighttime where my post-traumatic was shut off at night.
And it was at that point before bed, it was helping you sleep.
Yeah.
And then from there you started to deal with some other things. So rehab, obviously, when you went into rehab, and good for you that you did, that was like a kind of obviously what rehab is meant to be, a fixed setting to help you, kind of cold turkey it. Not cold, doesn't sound like they cold turkeyed you, but to really reset you at a more manageable level.
Oh yeah.
And then coming out of there, you are now using cannabis to help you sleep, essentially.
Oh, everything. Yeah. So at that point, it was the way that the medical industry that I was to be smoking through it is basically what they taught you at first, or what I was taught at first, was any issue you're going to have is you're going to light a joint and you're going to medicate through whatever issue you have.
Yeah.
So I found now that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can't just smoke through all your problems, because then you need 100 grams a day to deal with all of your problems. And then what are you doing at that point? You are doing nothing more than medicating through an opium high.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing as giving yourself as that fog.
Yeah.
And that does nothing.
Yeah.
But that's what I knew at the time, and that's what I was, right? So at that time, I was trying to come off of painkillers, antidepressants, antipsychotics, like a gambit list.
Wow.
But I didn't have access to enough cannabis where that was going to be a replacement. It was just going to be another tool. And at the same time, I was trying to clean myself up from, I'm still drinking heavily, because that's, to me, it wasn't a problem at the time yet, right?
Yeah, that wasn't something you were trying to deal with. You're just drinking.
Everything else. Yeah, drinking was just an acceptable way of doing it. But everything else at that point, right? I had done 47 days at the Royal Alex in the mental health and addictions ward for drugs and post-traumatic stress issues, as well as I had stopped taking all of my prescribed medications, and so I went really loopy.
You rebounded, right?
Yeah.
You just stopped taking them.
And I was done.
Immediately.
I am just going to smoke this.
Into the toilet they go.
Oh yeah.
And then instant, unbelievable rebound of all your natural systems, sending you into what and even sounds
Full
like an
panic.
even deeper depression, deeper everything.
Oh yeah.
Right. That is so unbelievably common. That and it's really hard to appreciate. Unless you've had someone in your life, or if you personally, or if you've been close to somebody, even if you just take antidepressants only, and you just take that category, and I mean, that's one of the most traumatic for a family to deal with, in my opinion, is when you have a loved one, and they're on these antidepressants, and they take them, and it puts them in a state that doesn't feel like themselves, right? So you're taking these antidepressants to depress emotions, and then you end up sometimes. I mean, I don't know if this is what you felt like, but some people describe it as all their feelings have gone away now.
100%.
Yeah. So that's how you felt? You take these things, you have no feelings.
I had zero.
You have no feelings.
I was
right?
a zombie.
And you want your feelings back, right? So yeah, sure, you're suppressing this thing, but it's a very powerful chemical response inside anybody's body, and you become very dependent on it very quickly, as far as what I know, and then the rebound, you instantly go off them. It's like this wave. It's this wave of depression, this wave of it's just your body naturally reacting to, hey, where's my emotional depressant? And my emotional depressant is gone. And here come the emotions.
Well, and you get brain zaps, because then your brain is going into withdrawal, because it's a chemical base that is basically releases serotonin or dopamine into your brain, right, depending on the antidepressant that you're on. And so at that point, you're also going through withdrawals where you're going to get physically and mentally sick. You're going to be throwing up, you're going to be sweating, you're going to be all of this kind of stuff.
And that's so hard for your family to understand, right?
Oh, yeah.
They go, you know, and I've been in this situation, and you know, where they go, okay, well, oh, now Bryce stopped taking his antidepressants. Now he's more depressed. God, you know, and it's your fault.
Yeah.
You know, or it's the family member's fault because they're on these things, and it's like, oh, well, why did they do that? Why did they stop taking those antidepressants? Well, it's because they want to have feelings.
You actually
again.
Want to have a life.
You're you're trying to get rid of this thing, and then but it's such a these drugs are so powerful that you know, and then the person ends up in a deeper depression, and then that becomes difficult for the family member or the family or the friends around the person to really understand, because they can't, you know, I can't understand how a family member feels. All I know is, you know, they're having some mental health issues, and they were supposed to be taking these pills from the doctor, and then they stopped taking them, and now they're more depressed. Well, come on, what are they doing? You know what I mean? Like,
right?
and I'm speaking from, you know, some personal, you know, experience, and you know, and that's not fair, right?
Yeah.
Because it's these drugs, it's these drugs that are causing this reaction, and that's why it's so important that, you know, that somebody doesn't pick up cannabis and then drop all their other drugs instantly that day and say, I'm doing cannabis now. Now I get off these antidepressants. It's
still a medication.
Yeah, and you have to baby yourself off of these things, right? Or it can be more detrimental, right? As you went through, you went through that. So.
Yeah, it was. So I'm still on a little bit of an antidepressant because I've never been able to get off of that dose, that 60 mil dose that everybody has that issue with. I've tried before, and it was just. I need time at a beach.
For sure. Right? I mean, it takes time. It takes, you know,
and
years and years and years.
I've been on antidepressants, antipsychotics, like you name it, since 2004.
Yeah.
So, you know, now that it's 2019 and I'm slowly weaning back down off of that giant list of medications, I'm at a point now where I have figured out how to medicate accordingly with my dosages. I've gone from 0.5 of a gram a day to I am prescribed 10 grams a day now, and I use oils, smoke, and rosin form, and I medicate thoroughly throughout, and it helps everything from my pain all the way through to my post-traumatic stress.
And so what did you replace? So what did you replace with that? What are you not on today that you were on at the beginning?
Any of the major pain pills.
Yeah, all opioids are out.
All gone.
Opioids are gone.
No more antipsychotics.
So you're 100% opioid free, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. I hear heroin can be detrimental on the streets.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
Opium is heroin.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
I actually, you know what? Yeah. Speaking of that, man,
I'm just doing a dig at the opioids. So I couldn't resist.
It is a giant epidemic, man.
Yeah. So that's amazing. So you're off all opioid based pain pills. That's good. Yeah. And what else?
No sleeping pills.
No sleeping pills.
No
Phenomenal.
Antipsychotics.
No.
I am only on a little bit of antidepressant and one pill for my stomach because of all of the GI issues that the pills have created.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and congratulations, congratulations, man, and I love that, and you know, so and it's not like, you know, so cannabis has not gotten you 100% off of everything.
Not yet.
Not yet. So maybe it will, right?
Oh yeah, it will.
But the thing I love about your story is it's gotten rid of this great big collection of other shit that you do not have to worry about. You don't have to deal with those side effects. You don't have to deal with those feelings, right?
Oh yeah. And I have emotion, and I
you have
my
emotion.
feelings back. And
I've noticed you do have emotion. It's very
much so. Yeah,
it's good.
I can be super passionate.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it allows me to be real emotional,
Yeah.
right? Where if I'm going to feel something with the other medications, everything was shut off.
Yep.
There was
It
there was
inhibits
no,
everything. That's what it does.
It's
It
a blocker.
inhibits. It
Exactly.
blocks something,
Yeah,
or
100%.
it blocks something or activates something.
Or it changes the chemical compounds in
Yeah.
your brain to make you feel a different.
Yeah.
Where cannabis will actually make you feel that experience, and not so much block it, but it can actually show you
Yeah.
real emotions. It can show you your real injuries. Like, it's not, cannabis isn't something that replacing or it's going to take you off of. It's going to show you what's wrong with your body. And it's up to you to then fix that problem, because cannabis won't.
No.
It won't
No.
fix it.
You can't. Yeah. It can't.
It'll show you what the fuck's wrong with
Yeah.
you, though, real quick. And if you don't take that upon yourself, all cannabis is going to do is just keep reflecting at that point. It's going to be like a beacon of light.
Yeah.
This is what's wrong. And if you don't
Yeah.
fix it, that's up to you. It's not up to cannabis to do it.
It'll give you some mindfulness to
Yeah.
to address the issue and help you think and process, help you think
100%.
about things and
Yeah.
process things,
Or put you into a mind state where you can then process it, right?
Yeah.
Like, even with, I use cannabis as a tool when I go to mental health now.
Yeah.
If I go and talk to a psychologist and I am in a mental state where I don't want to talk, because you get in those states where, fuck,
Yeah, you do.
I don't
Yeah,
want to
for
talk
sure.
to nobody today. I'm going to trick myself, and I am going to actually medicate with a
Yeah.
sativa dominant strain
Yeah.
that is going to make me chatty.
Yeah, you're going to go in there and talk 60 miles an hour.
But then you bash through those
I don't
things.
feel like talking.
Yeah.
5 minutes later.
Oh my God, I just want to talk about everything. Right? And your doctor's
Are you
like,
tired of me saying words?
Why are you talking about 6 things at once? Just take notes. I'm doing this, right? Like, it's one of those.
Are you getting this?
Yeah. I'm dealing with this.
Yeah.
You better be listening. Yeah.
Right faster.
Oh yeah. It's one of those where it's not gonna do like all the other medications and just hide your feelings or your emotions or what's going on back here. It actually brings it forward. And if you don't get to deal with that stuff, it's just going to continuously bring it forward to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think another important part of your story is that you're still using some prescription pills to deal with some things, right?
Yeah.
And it's not and I just want to make the point that, or from my perspective, because I mean, obviously we wanted to sit down and, your tagline, you have a tagline, Mr. Hooper has a tagline, and it's cannabis saved my life.
Yeah, it
Right?
gave my life back. Yeah.
Oh.
Cannabis gave my life back.
I messed it up. Sorry,
No, it's
cannabis
okay.
gave my life back.
Yeah.
I was paraphrasing the quote.
Yeah.
So cannabis gave me my life back.
Yeah.
Gave my life back. That's you've given it the credit, right? You've given
100%.
your relationship with cannabis
Oh yeah.
the credit, which is an immense amount of credit.
Right? Yeah, I've
in that
given
statement,
I've given
right?
it a lot of credit that it probably shouldn't, because
Yeah.
it's at the same time, I know I have done a lot
Yeah.
of that hard work, but it has
Yeah.
shown me
Yeah.
the work that I have to do and allowed me to be able to do that work
Yeah.
and process and be present
Yeah.
with that medication.
Yeah, well,
too.
you've given it the honor at least of being the tool you used,
Oh,
right?
yeah, 100%.
Because really it is. It's Bryce, right? The credit goes to Bryce, right? But you're holding this tool in the highest esteem of what supported your journey there. But I think it's so important from my perspective, to point out that you're using some very powerful pills still, right, to help you out, because it's not about, in my opinion, it's not about, and I think this is a little bit of could we have to be careful. I think in the cannabis industry, in the medical cannabis industry, as an educator who you are, for myself as an incoming cultivator and building a health and wellness company is what I'm focused on. I think it can be very dangerous to be running around saying, cannabis can replace everything. Cannabis is the number
100%,
one. Use cannabis for everything.
It is still a medicine, and it is still something that, with doctors' help,
and it's not always going to work, right? I mean,
no.
it can work for many, many things in many situations.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important for our industry to engage with patients to engage with people that are trying to achieve goals, and not cast aside all of there is great work in the pharmaceutical
Still
world,
medicine.
and these prescription pills are very, very useful, used in the right way, sparingly, and recognizing that these are very powerful drugs, very powerful drugs,
medications.
So if there was a rewind button in history, and your 10 years ago was today, right? Or 12 years ago or 13 years ago was today, and then there was and we're going to get there in 3 to 5 years. I hope it'll be that quick in 3 to 5 years.
You know what? I think so too.
I
big
think
time.
so, where it's like, okay, here's all these very powerful drugs. Those are our last line of defense, used in a very sparing, sensible way, right?
Yeah.
First, we
responsibly.
done. Responsibly.
Yeah.
First, we have all these, cannabinoid options. We have an unbelievable.
Should be a first line, 100%.
Yeah, we have an unbelievable first line of defense with hundreds of cannabinoid-based drugs across the slate before we move into the opium-based drugs or the opioid drugs, right?
Yeah.
Let's try all these, because our list of potential long-term or short-term effects are very, very, very small.
Yeah.
They're there though.
Yeah.
There's risks there too.
Yep.
Right?
And just like any other medication, it may not work for everybody. And I have noticed
morphine doesn't work for everybody, right? Some people take a morphine and they're like, I felt nothing. I feel all the pain still.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Where they're now trapped in a motionless state, but they're now as high as a morphine patient, and that's even worse because now that depression and everything else is going to come back into it too.
Yeah. Certain strains are not good for people for certain reasons.
Yeah.
They're different drugs. There's many different types of cannabinoid.
And it's a different,
drugs.
Exactly. In each strain, and I hate to go into, we should be medicating at this point, like Canada and where we are in the medical industry, and what I've witnessed in the last 5 years of being part of that medical, we're 20 years behind. We should be medicating with terpene levels and not strain specifics at this point.
That's
However, we are still looking at strains as labels for individual plant strains, right?
Yeah.
Where we should be looking at
the chemical composition per
yes,
strain. It's so funny.
That is where medical. That is where it's going to be.
That's the
That's where you're going to be.
Yeah.
You're going to be
all the cannabinoids, all the
ailments
flavors
are going to be. It's going to.
Yeah.
Your ailments are going to be treated by
yeah.
flavonoids and terpenes, and not so much on strain specifics right now.
We need to move away from the. I mean, we can pay homage to these terms, perhaps, but it's very confusing for a person to say, I need to medicate with, bubble kush, bubblegum kush is my depression tool, as opposed to saying, strains with these levels of THC, CBD, CB, all the cannabinoids, and basically these certain levels of terpenes, flavors, flavonoids, lemon and linalool. We need to kind of get there, and you're right. We do need to move along quite quickly. I mean, the Israelis are really getting this.
Yeah.
Like the
big time.
I find that, and it's coming. It's coming. I think we're going to catch up pretty quick. But yeah. So today, let's end off here. So. Incredible journey, and thank you for speaking with me about it. So today, let's just recap here. Today, Mr. Hooper, right? You do monthly educational sessions at the Herb Clinic. I'm assuming you're still involved with, maybe doing some, or you're working with veterans at least, probably at some of these sessions. Yeah. And you're an educator now. So you're very qualified, right? You are.
I try.
You're incredibly qualified, right? I mean, you can speak to this significant journey. I mean, if sleeping was your first goal using cannabis-based medicine, and then one by one removing the utilization of all these other drugs in place of kind of a singular and more quality of life solution is what it sounds like. You've gone through it. So, for me as a patient, speaking to somebody like yourself means a lot, right? So what's your schedule like? What's your ongoing weekly life like? I know you do a lot of traveling around to sessions and whatnot as well. You do remote sessions. You're doing
special sessions.
Yeah, you do special sessions. So what is your dailies?
So I've set it up now where St. Albert at the home clinic, at the Herb Clinic, the second Thursday of every month from 7 to 9 p.m. is the clinic's information and education session. That is where I'll have a medical patient come out and I'll interview them depending on who they are, what their involvement with the world is. And then I also bring in a licensed producer. And that licensed producer I'll interview the person as a person. We get to know that rep a little bit, and then we get to learn about that licensed producer and their medicines and what they offer to not only the veteran community, but the medical community as a whole. And then I also do, every 3 months, I go up to Coal Lake on the Air Force Base there.
Oh, awesome.
Only because I've noticed that the peer support, that's something that the Coal Lake area does not have. And it's not so much just veteran based. I have opened it up to civilians and veterans. And we're working with either the Legion or the Air Force Association up there. And so they'll give us an access to a venue of some kind, and I'll bring the basic, either a Cannabis 101 or some kind of a sessions to them, and that's about 2 hours as well. I also travel anywhere that anybody wants to kind of hear it. I've gone to Wainwright and I've worked at the Legion there. If any other Legion wants to bring education to their platform of veterans or first responders or civilians, even for that matter. I also educate at, business colleges, and I've traveled to Ontario. I also go and educate other cannabinoid clinics. I've traveled to Toronto to educate on other veteran specifics. But just the Herb Clinic has kind of keyed it where education is our main driven purpose. Because I have found with my experience in the cannabis industry, there is no education. So the basis of our clinic is just that, is you're going to get that overwhelming amount of education that you probably don't need all of it, but it's better to have most of that gray matter updated, and then you're asking questions that you're 6 months ahead of most other people.
I love that, and thank you for doing that. This is what one of the things that I'm most excited about in the whole rollout of the medically focused cannabis industry is this whole education component. It's like, hey, come and learn about how you can find a cannabis-based or based treatment that might be unique to you, but you can use it to achieve some goals in your life, and it's and that is not something that has ever happened or needed to happen in the last however many decades of prescription pill issuance, right? It's more like you're on this pill, and maybe there's a brief overview of the side effects, and then you hear like a news report on CBC Marketplace or something. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, these drugs cause hallucinations in 50% of their patients. You're like, oh my God. Cannabis, almost, I guess, maybe thankfully, due to the way that it's rolling out, very over-regulated and very legislated. I guess we might have that to thank, that we're able to go out there like this and help really get out there, and there's so much education to be done that it's like it's an opportunity for us in the medical world, with whether it's from peers to peers or medical professionals to patients, to like wake people up to how drugs work in their bodies. Cannabis is doing that.
I think that's the big one, is that with the stigmatization and the decriminalization over the next little bit of cannabis in itself, because of the reefer madness that we've experienced over the last 100 years.
We have to counter the anti-education.
There's a lot of people that don't realize that there's a system inside of our bodies that actually works with
Yeah.
cannabis.
Yeah, the internal cannabinoid system.
Oh!
Endocannabinoids.
And-
We're going to infographic this.
Yeah.
All our technical stuff, we're going to infographic.
Perfect.
So it'll all pop up. Right now, we'll have an infographic of the endocannabinoid system. It'll be like lighting up as I say this, and I'm doing my hands like this. Pew, 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 pew,
And it's
pew.
gonna be right
I'm just
here.
making it hard. Sophia. You got that, Sophia? Pew, pew, pew. Okay.
That's awesome.
She's a really good graphic artist. But anyways, well, Bryce, you know, you're doing great work.
Thanks, man.
I've been to your sessions. I enjoy your sessions. Even when I'm not there, sometimes we're able to record your sessions
Oh,
so I
yeah.
can watch them
yeah.
afterwards. But I appreciate the work you do, and I appreciate you telling your story. So,
Thank you for having me,
all
Tanner.
right, buddy.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.